Hi everyone, welcome to the stream. So today we get to continue right where we left off. Yesterday I finally finished getting all the unit tests to work again, so we're good to go. We are 230 something out of 230 something, but just to summarize, everything worked out, so that's great. And we fixed those issues last night we were having from all that refactoring, so today we're going to address one more thing for the map preloading before we commit this. So we were talking about this yesterday, about how checking for pre-cache locally generated file to re-add to pack first if the date is still current. So what I mean by that, it's kind of cryptic. If I go to adventuresinlestoria.cpp and we go ahead and pull up, let me think of what it was called. Just trying to get my brain together for this. When we're setting up the levels, where we're saving the levels, so it's the pre-cache, there it is. Pre-cache new levels. And we look over here, we currently have this, which says if the pre-cache file exists, right? So if the pre-cache file doesn't exist, obviously we need to make it happen. Or if the map cache was out of date, we also had to make it happen. But there is one more condition we have to speed up this process, because right now we're going to make a brand new map cache queue. But what if the map cache is not out of date, but we don't have a pre-cache file? So we can say in here, let's say in theory that the map cache was not out of date. Then what this means is that there has been no updates to the map. However, if we don't have a pre-cache file, then we're going to check for one more condition. And the condition is, what if we have it locally? So let me pull up my local file system, and let us just say that if we go under assets and we go under cache, and we find here that these files exist just locally. If they exist on our computer and the map cache is now out of date, it means we can simply load this file into the resource pack. We don't have to do anything else, which is very nice because that means we can save on loading times and we don't have to do anything. So then we're going to say, so if the map cache is not out of date and the pre-cache file does not exist, then we're also going to see if inside our file system, if we have a local cache file. So essentially we're going to have some kind of boolean that says local cache file exists. So let's write that boolean real quick. I just put cool bool. It's a cool bool. So this is local cache file exists, and we're checking for specifically the map file being inside of here. It's like we're looking in the cache file specifically for foreground tile data underscore map name dot data, and we're looking for upper foreground tile data underscore map name dot data. We're gonna need both of these in order to finish this. So let's see here. We already have a standard format with the information we mostly need. Oh, it's actually right here, the map cache file name. So we actually use that to determine if it exists in the game pack or not. I wonder why we only do it for the foreground tile data, because it's like, we also should do it for the upper foreground tile data. Interesting, right? If we're for some reason missing a file, then yeah. So let's actually add that. That could technically be called a bug, right? So map cache upper foreground file name. And so that will check for the other file, because it's possible we might, in a very rare scenario, have one over the other. So this would fix that. So pre-cache file exists if both exist. If one does not exist, then we need to generate both, because we might not have the data we need. So we need to make sure we account for both of those. So inside here, where local cache file exists, we're going to use a very similar format, but it's going to be local. So we simply provide map cache file name and map cache upper foreground file name. Okay. So, if this condition here is true, we don't have to send it to the map cache queue and wait it out. We simply just use it as is. And go from there. I'm gonna close some windows. I have a lot of windows open, just of all sorts of things that we probably don't care or need right now. So just a couple things. I'm also gonna restart this real quick. I want a playlist. I think I can just open it from inside of here. Playlist. There we go. Sorry about that. Just had to fix that. Okay. And so, instead of adding to the map cache queue, we're just going to add this file directly into the resource pack. So, if we go to loading screen, when the map has finished being added to the cache queue, oh, it's actually under prepare level. Under stage, I believe, loading phase 5. When we're all done, we're going to do tile group data save, and we provide the game pack, the name, and all that. So this function right here is what does all of it for us. Now, I can just call this function to essentially do the same thing because it already exists. Because it's been locally generated, we just need to call these functions. We don't have to do anything else. The tile groups themselves is the only thing we don't have. So I guess it's more like we're just copying these files over. So we don't even need this part. We just need the very bottom where it says pack.add file name, and we add that in. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that now. It's gonna be right here. So I should be able to just do pack, because we're still in the AIL class, I think. Yes. So it might be game pack, actually. Yeah. So it's game pack. Add file. For some reason, this isn't registering. Oh, it's the object itself. So it's not a pointer. And then we do add file, and then that file name. So we can do both the map cache file name adding that to our game pack. And the map cache upper foreground file name. And once we've done that, we can actually go ahead and save. Because I believe the only thing we're doing in here is checking... Let's see. This would be... I don't know where this would be called, actually. Let me double check. Pre-cache new levels. Where are we calling this function? I assume we're calling this function when we reach the main menu. So let's try state main menu. Pre-cache, there it is. So right when we reach the main menu, we are going to pre-cache those new levels. So we want to put those in there. I'm gonna go ahead and call that function, or not call that function, go ahead and save the game pack here, because I believe this is the point where we want to do this before we load anything else. So we can do game, save, or excuse me, game pack dot save. And we just have to provide the file name and the key. And so that we can also find inside of CalGroup data file. The values are called... Let me see here. Oh, it's probably done, I think, at the end of the loading phase. So if we go to prepare level under here, let's go to the very last loading phase. Oh, hi there, Plasticky. Welcome. Good to see you. Okay, so we do call it here. We have the directory built in, so we kind of want to just copy that. So I'll go ahead and do that there. And from here, we should have just transferred it locally because it exists locally. So now we're going to have to test that. So as an example, and I think this is a really easy way we can test this, we recently changed 4 map files. And because we've changed those 4 map files, in theory, we have to regenerate their caches, even though we didn't do anything but change some enum values. And so the game is going to detect that and make it so the values are going to be updated. Or the files are, the pre-cache files are going to be updated just for those maps. So it will only do those 4. But what happens if I delete this game pack? Now it would have to generate everything again. But because we just added this line of code here, in theory, if this condition is met, as in we already have a bunch of local cache files and they've been updated, it will just pull from those and it won't actually break anything. Can you show off your plushies today? Show them off? Aww. I got my little bunny friends. Look at them. Aren't they cute? This guy. You got little bunnies. Little Miffy. Aren't they cute? They're just hanging out. There. Are you happy now? They are super cute. Okay. So in theory, those will only have to regenerate those 4 maps, and then the others will be copied straight from here. So we shouldn't have to do more generating. At least that's the hope. So let's see what happens. So we just have to recompile and go for it. You're welcome. Alright, so it says the game pack has been generated, and let's see what happens now. Okay, so I think it worked because it says it's regenerated the map cache for 3 particular levels. I was expecting 4, so I'm not sure why that didn't work. But the other map caches should have just been copied over. So let's go to load game and let's just go in a stage real quick. And it should load relatively quickly because we already have the map cache set up for it. Actually, let me go this way. This is a particularly large level, so we can see immediately loads. So the map cache is still updated for this stage, even though I originally deleted it. We didn't regenerate it, we just copied the file we had before back into it. So this actually works perfectly. So at this point, this pretty much does what I needed to do. Let me just triple check that we didn't miss a map, because I could have sworn there were 4 maps that we adjusted yesterday. And looking here, oh, 2 of them were the same map. They were just 2 maps called Hub. I see now. So even though we regenerated 4 maps, we don't even use this one. So really only 3 got regenerated. Okay, so that makes sense. So we went ahead and added pre-caching, copying from local hard drive. I'm just gonna call it local file system. If the map cache was detected up to date, but the what is it called? But the file is, the cache file is missing from the resource pack. Okay. And that is release build 12776. Okay. And with that, I think the map preloader branch is now done. As in, we don't need to touch this branch anymore. We are officially done with it. So, that's exciting. Okay. Whoa, my audio kicked up, sorry. What happened? Hold on. I did not expect that at all, but okay. I was just expecting that to cut that off real quick, but yeah. Anyway, I don't know why it did that, but did it just, hold on. It's being silly. Okay. Get off of here. There we go. Silly. Just hardware issues. Hello? Okay. I think we are good. So, apologies for that. So finally, we're done with all the map preloading. It's been something I've wanted to accomplish for a while, so I'm very happy about it. So now that we're done with that feature, we're going to be making a pull request. We haven't done that in a minute, have we? So we're going to start a new pull request. Because we can't commit to master directly, it's protected, the branches. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And this pull request is added map preloading to ensure stages no longer have large loading times. Yeah. It's actually a very nice feature that we've spent about a little over a week implementing. You can see there were a lot of commits that were involved with this, because of course we thought it was going to be pretty simple, but it never is that simple, right? Everything ends up being more complicated than you originally expect. So I do have a build confirmation check that I have to go through first. So this check has to succeed. It has to be able to compile for Emscripten and Linux before it can proceed with the merge. So as long as that checks out, which it should, we haven't really changed anything major or fundamental, then we'll finally have that pull request done. So there's something interesting I discovered last night. I just kind of stumbled upon it while rereading the docs for range views and stuff. There is something called... Also, this is fascinating. Cache latest will take whatever the latest range view result you got and kind of cache it. So if you were to then run it again, it wouldn't have to recalculate. So for example, the example they use here is that you have a couple of functions which will compute the square of a number and whether or not a number is even. And so to determine, like, okay, I want to calculate all the even squares, and they calculate it here, right? And they show what each function does by printing out the function name followed by the calculation. So it's first calculating 1 and the square of 1, then 2 and the square of 2, etc., etc. And so when it gets to here and it does the print, you can see it does another transform. But down here, once it's figured out what the value was, it doesn't have to transform it again. So you're essentially saving you're getting a free calculation out of it by chaining these cache latest calls in between your two views. So it will remember what this transform was, so if you do something else later on, like print, it can reference it. So that's kind of cool. But anyway, that's not what I'm here for. The one thing I saw was that there is something called asConstView. So if anybody was around about a week ago, we were trying to figure out how to make a function cooperate with a const function of mine. And I'm like, oh, there's not really a way to make the view const, so we can't really send it out because it's considered non-const. And so this function would have to lose its const correctness, which my project has a lot of, so I would have had to rewrite a bunch of stuff because it cascades, and I really didn't want to do that. So in here, I'm going to have a brand new, so we're going to test some code. I want to see if this actually works or not. We're going to have a new member function inside this random class I have, and we're just going to call it, let's call it read. And what it's going to do is it's going to read in a... Let's say it's going to read in a set of values, and it's just going to print out its range. It's going to like output it. So we will auto this. I'm just going to keep it auto for now for the sake of simplicity. And let's say it accepts a container like a vector of integers. So we'll keep that pretty simple, right? And what I wanted to do is to just output this range. Maybe like we'll transform them or something. Something silly. But yeah. Colonial Puppet says, your makeup is so amazing. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, what we're going to return is numbers, but we're also going to use the pipe, and then we're going to say something like transform, and transform, or excuse me, standard views transform, And transform is going to take a lambda, at least it should take a lambda, which will transform each individual value given the lambda. So if we pass in a const int ref num from the vector, and then we say return, and follow that up with, let's do num times 2. Let's just make everything in the list be 2 times what we originally specify, and we're just going to return it, right? And the trouble I had was adding const to this. Apparently, it was impossible for me to do const here because views kind of... Oh, I guess we're closing that. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Hello? There's an output window here with nothing else. Open main again. Okay, I don't know what happened, but it closed whatever window I had open. But yeah, our issue was we couldn't make this const before because apparently, like, standard ranges or standard views has internal state that might modify, which means when it tried to make this function work, it couldn't do it. So now, if I try to run here, read numbers, the question is, will this compile or not? And according to our tests, it wouldn't let us do that before. But it seems like it's working here. And I guess with whatever output we get from this, we should be able to do something like const results, const auto results, and perhaps store that, or at least capture it, right? So we can look at it. Because we could probably like iterate through it and do whatever. So results has a size of 5. And since it's like a view thing, we can't actually like... The way it's stored is weird, right? So yeah. Function. We're gonna have to like actually look at it. So let's try this. Let's try for const int num inside of read numbers. Essentially that should be the same thing. We'll go ahead and print out each number. So num followed by nline. Okay, so if we go all the way to the bottom, is this an infinite loop? What is happening? Why are we constantly putting on 1, 2? Where is this? Oh, down here in on user update. Okay. We were testing some code earlier, so that would explain that. But yeah, here we can see we get the values 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. So that's telling us it works. What's odd is I did not expect this to work before, so I'm not sure what I did differently, right? Like, maybe I just like typoed something. But the whole point of me doing this was I wanted to try and make the views work for our buff system in the game. So for example, and we can go through this now that we're done with this branch. In fact, I have to delete this branch once it's ready. All checks were successful. This pull request is blocked because it's outdated. Okay, update branch by merge. I don't know why it would be outdated, but it was. That's weird. Diff content not available. I don't know why we weren't up to date. I guess I just haven't pulled in a while. It's just strange. But okay. There's no diff. So anyways, when that finishes, we can delete this branch. But for now, we're going to go to another branch. So let's go get new branch. And we're going to do, I'm going to call this buff views. So what our objective is to convert our get buff functions to use views instead. That was the initial goal. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the player.cpp file, and we're going to go straight to, I'm going to put you over here, the get buffs function, because this is what we were trying to work on before. And so you can see here, the get buffs function is a const function that will take a list of buffs and return it. So originally, we basically copied every buff into another vector and then passed that along. And that's nice and all, but it would be nice if we didn't have to deal with that copy. Hi there, Tiger. Welcome to the stream. I hope your evening is going well. Thank you. But yeah, we just finished the pre-map cache loading branch. It's currently being verified. So once this check goes through, we should be able to merge. So we're just waiting on that into master. Because I'm not allowed to commit into master either, even though it's my repository. Just a good practice, right? So that way I'm not accidentally working in it all the time. We're gonna try transforming this using views again. The last time we tried to do this, we ran into an issue with constness. But since I just tested out that this does indeed work with const, even without that as const view thing, we might be okay, assuming it actually works the way I expect. So what we want to do is convert this from returning a const standard vector buff into returning a const, and we can just say auto here because realistically what's going to happen in here is going to produce a very long templated return type. So ideally I shouldn't have to actually type out what the return type is. And so because we've done that here, we have to go to the declaration of it, and we're going to say const auto get buffs. So we're going to start here and see if this compiles, because once this compiles, everything else can follow suit. So starting with something small. This is like the first major function we would have to modify. So instead of doing this, our goal is to grab buff list and do a range filter. So we're going to do standard ranges filter, or excuse me, standard views filter, and then provide a function here. And essentially the same function we have over here, just moved over. In theory, this is all we need to do in order to filter out our buffs and return it as a range view. The auto should populate properly based on what we return here. So that should be good. Now, when we use this, we're gonna have to deal with other things like the size being greater than 0, right? But then we learned, okay, well, we can use something, we can kind of use a trick. If we are able to iterate through it, then we can grab the first one. Or we can actually filter it out for the first view and only grab that item. So if we look here, under standard ranges views, there's literally a view that's just called, where is it? Oh, let's just go here. A single view. So a view that contains a single element of a single value, right? So if you were to use that, you could literally just get one element. Produces a view that contains only one element of a specified value. Now my question is, can I convert from another view to just that single element? Or is single view, let's see, maybe this just lets us grab stuff in place. Like maybe it doesn't actually like reduce the size of a view, it just gives us access to individual elements. So that's another idea too. So I'm looking here, and they're saying they're making a single view with a value, and this is pi. So it's saying it's pi, and begin points to it. It's got a size of 1, and then here we have a string which is getting moved into a single view as well. So this isn't really what I was looking for. What I really want is just something that returns the very first value, right? Which, I mean, I guess would be just creates a subrange from an iterator and a count. I mean, maybe like counted keys, values, zip, adjacent, chunk, slide, stride, to input. So there's a lot of different values we could try here. Let me look at counted. A counted view presents a view of the elements of the counted range I inclusive to n, non-exclusive for some iterator I, and non-negative integer n. So if you provide an iterator an account, a counted range is the n elements starting with the element pointed by I, up to and but not including the element, if any, pointed to by the results of n applications of plus plus I. So in theory, if I could use counted one time, I would get that, right? Result. So if we look here, there's a standard views counted using begin on IL, which is a vector, presumably, or an array. I guess that's a vector. +1, 3. So as an iterator, I don't know if I could do that necessarily with the pipe operator, considering what this does. But who knows, maybe. Let's test it. Or take n, and you can set n equals 1. Is that a thing? Take view. A view consisting of the first n elements. Oh. A range adapter that represents view of the elements from an underlying sequence. Okay, I think that's actually what I need. Okay, I like that. Yeah, I think this is exactly what I need. Thank you. So, if we were to do get buffs and then we do standard views take 0, or take, not take 0, but take 1, then we should have, well, one element, right? So then we can look at that element and see. Now, what if it doesn't have an element, right? Then I guess this won't iterate, in theory. So this would be a buff. Get buffs returns. So each of these should be a buff. This is a non-const function. So I guess I could take non-const also. But yeah, that should technically work. And then I guess this would be like B. And then we would pass in B as well. Something like that. Operator pipe failed deduction. Interesting. Let's try a simpler case real quick and see what happens with take. So let's say right here I do standard views take 1. So in theory, if I did that, we should only get the very first value, which is going to be 0, because 0 times 2 is still 0. And yes, indeed, it does just return 0. So that more or less does what I expect. We can also try passing in an empty vector and seeing what happens. In this case, we get nothing, which also is expected. So that technically works. So what's different between here and what I got over there, right? Because that's the next question. It's like, what is the difference? What is the difference? Because, I mean, if I were to go up here and just say, like, let's ignore this for just a second, and I'm just gonna undo all these. And let's just say, I'm actually gonna even do this for a moment, that we chained this together, right? So we could do something like standard views take 1. This would get us just the first buff in this, right? And so if we returned that, would that work? That's the question. It does say it's expecting a parenthesis, so I don't know if that's or something else, but let me try a build. But no, I expect it to just kind of work, honestly. But we'll see what happens. I also found out that release build has a couple of different warning level options compared to my debug mode, which is why that one time where I switched to debug mode, suddenly I couldn't compile my program because we had certain warnings that weren't actually being outputted as warnings on release build. Do you not use AI to help you program stuff? Not really. Well, not at all. Usually if I'm just coding and I need assistance, I will usually just look up the reference and go from there, because it's usually all I will need. They either have an example or it just explains what I need it to explain, so I typically don't need AI to do that for me. Although I understand there are folks that use AI in programming to just speed up all the basic typing, which I don't mind doing. I'm not in a rush to get things done. This isn't a job or anything, so I'm not being tracked on metrics or anything for how fast I can churn out code. So I'm just having a good time over here. A function that returns auto cannot be used before it is defined. A function that returns auto cannot be used before it is defined. So that means this now needs to include the header because this has an auto function. I guess it should include it though, because that's the only way it knows it exists, so I'm a little confused. I guess it can't deduce what the type is. Let me see. So get buffs is supposed to return a view, but this view, I guess I have to be implicit in here then. How do we get it to deduce this type for us, given this information? Well, buff list should be the type, so it should be expected that buff will come out here. I guess I would need to, like, I mean, I could be explicit with the actual view, but I think that's one of the problems we run into when we use this, is that some things like this get a little tricky. Right now, I'm learning CPP and trying to make a game in STL, but sometimes it's just too much for me to figure it out. And then I use AI, then I feel shit after using it. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, the feeling like shit part is self-inflicted, of course. Is it... like, the thing about programming is there's too much to just know, right? Like, you can't just know everything. So, using AI to assist you is no real different from looking something up like this. I guess the only real difference is you're not necessarily sure if the AI is exact, whereas documentation like this was written by a professional who understands this stuff and provides concise documentation. So if I were going to recommend anything, I would look for like STL guides or tutorials that more or less get you on track to what you're trying to do. and maybe start taking little code snippets from that and making it work. AI just kind of is a faster search engine in the sense of it tries to do all that for you. And try is the key word, because sometimes it doesn't do a great job, right? So I think that's the only big like caveat that I have with it. And because AI can be inconsistent like that, I don't really think it's a good way to constantly code. I just think it's fast, and that's really all it's for. It's faster. And people use that a lot. They're like, oh, if you use AI to code, you'll be faster. You can get more done. It doesn't take as much time. And I'm like, okay, I mean, that's fair. If time was a factor, then I would probably consider it. But in my case, time is not a factor, so I take my time to read and understand it, play with it. A lot of times if I run into an issue, I think the first thing I do is maybe take a small block of code in a small example project and just try to mess with it, right? Do whatever you want to it. See if it, make it not compile, make it spit out a bunch of stuff you didn't expect. Just break it in any way you can, and that's a good way to gain understanding of something in the long term. And C++ is a very complicated language, so it's expected that trying to do something as advanced to like learning it through SDL is not going to be easy, because not only do you have to deal with the difficulties of the language, but you also have to deal with the difficulties of game and software design. And so you're tackling like a lot of problems in one go. And that's not to say you shouldn't try building a game, but building a couple of small applications leading up to your game is probably going to help you a lot. Because you get a better understanding of like the structures of your programs, you get better understanding of how to use C++ to do what you want. You try things out that you eventually want to do to incorporate into a bigger project that gets more and more complex. It's like layers. You add more and more over time. So this clearly didn't work, and I'm not sure why. I don't really want to mess with it today, as we got another priority that I want to address. But I'm gonna leave this branch here, because this branch, we might come back to it someday. I need to, like, day by day, we try to experiment a little bit with this range view stuff. After yesterday's escapade with range views, I felt a little more confident, but it still didn't work out. So we'll be back to try again tomorrow. Or some other day, right? We always come back to this stuff. So the branch map preloader has been successfully merged into master. Yay! A master merge. We haven't had that in a while. So we get to delete this branch from the remote. And yeah, boom. We're up to 1840 commits on our repo. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start another new... Well, first let me pull or fetch, because we are behind on our local master. I'm going to stash the changes we just did. And now that we switch to it, let's just sync our local repo with the remote. Bring that in. And now let's base a new branch off of it. So what are we working on now? I've been mentioning it a few times lately, but the item loading process for my game is rather slow. So today we're going to start looking at the why. We're going to do some profiling, and we're going to try to establish a plan for how to fix it. We're going to investigate the data structures that my inventory system currently uses. It's going to get really messy, I promise, and we're going to try to go from there. So we're going to call this the inventory optimization branch. It's going to be based off of master, and let's check that out. And then all we're going to do is run the code. We'll run it in debug. That way we get all of our symbols. And we will also run the profiler. And I want to run the profiler when we try to load our file. Our main character file, file 1, has over 300 items on that character. And it takes a noticeably long time to get in-game and get out of game. So not only is it costly to add items to our inventory, it's costly to delete them. presumably because the same callbacks for adding items has to be done to remove items. And to give a little more context, when we add an item, we don't just increment a value to our inventory or add an entry to an item list. We have multiple item inventory like stashes, I guess, depending on what the equipment or item type is. Items can be stacks or not stacks. And when we add an item to our inventory, we actually go through all the listeners. We have like a listener system, so any inventory element can subscribe to a callback. So every time we add an item to our inventory, any inventory, or excuse me, any interface that directly has an interest in our inventory will also subscribe to that. Interesting take. Thanks for the advice. Yeah. I know it's nothing specific. It was pretty general, but just some words of wisdom. Yeah. It's the way I go about things, right? The reason I don't use AI at all is because I just prefer to refer to concise documentation. I think that's pretty important. Documentation is a very useful resource. Why are we erroring out? Starting the game. Oh, I need to grab the pack ID. That's right. We're in a new branch, so I have to grab that real quick. I'll keep you all on here. Oh yeah, yesterday I rewrote my GitT blocker script with a few more, I guess you could call them like traps. So basically, if you view very certain sections of my repository site that a normal user would never be interested in, it actually marks you as a bot and bans you from my server. And I did that because I was noticing a lot of the slower web scrapers were getting through. So I'm just like, let me get rid of you guys by adding some traps, because no sane human would want to view very certain files of very certain pages. So that's how we do that. So certain pages on my repo are now essentially traps. But it's a funny way to catch those guys, because no normal human would ever view those pages. It's kind of like the same idea as like robots.txt, right? The whole point of robots.txt is that a bot is supposed to fetch it. It's like the nice thing to do is, if you're a robot, fetch this. It'll tell you what you can and cannot do on the site. But there's nothing saying they can't just break the rules anyway, which a lot of bots do. So this is more like a preventative measure of, hey, if you can touch this file, you're not human. So goodbye. Yeah. So let me try running this again now that I added the pack ID. About 10 years ago, I looked at Git and Mercurial and decided to go with Mercurial, and I've stuck with it, so now I'm out of step with the world because I don't know Git. Oh. Well, luckily Git is pretty easy to pick up for the very basics, so... And something like Visual Studio, or Visual Studio Code even, integrates pretty heavily with Git, so you don't even have to know the commands really to get a lot done with it. And anything you don't know, you can always look up. There's always a tutorial online, or a command, again, documentation you can view for that kind of stuff. So it's not too bad. I remember using, oh, what was it? Oh, we're generating map caches again? Oh, because I deleted that asset pack. Oh, wait, there's more. Do we have to do everything? Uh-oh, hold on. Do I not have a local cache? Because I don't want to generate everything in debug mode. That'll take forever. Cache. It's all here. Oh, is the config gone? So in config, we're supposed to have a pre-cached timestamps file. You know what? I know what it is. When we do git, right? This all gets changed, like all these timestamps. So it's thinking a lot of these maps have changed because these are like different versions of maps now from when we download them. So I guess that makes sense. If we pull from Git, we should expect that we're going to have to recreate these. So I'm actually going to go into release build here just so I can get through this, because this is going to take a while. So, and I guess that's the sucky part with the pre-caching system now, is I'm going to have to regenerate them if they're not up to date. So I could also add some kind of flag or something, like an override that says, okay, if this flag is true, we're not going to check for like the date stuff. Because I know right now the pre-cache files are up to date. Like, we just updated them. So we might have to add something else just to reduce friction of the system. But for now, if I run this in release, it'll take only a little bit of time. And then we'll do our profiling and go from there. But yeah. I was trying to think of what the old source control system I used to use was. SVN. That's what it was. Subversion. Yeah. I remember you used to use Subversion for random projects. It's still around, of course, just like Mercurial. It's just not everywhere. Everybody's like, Git. And, I mean, it makes sense. Git's pretty powerful, and I guess it was kind of the popularity of it that really, like, cemented as the de facto standard, right? Once enough people use something, then everybody's using it, so you integrate it into yours as well, and blah blah blah. It all kind of wraps around and connects. So that was surprisingly fast. Oh, I think I know what's happened. If I quit out of the game before the map cache queue is done, it thinks the map cache isn't out of date. But also some files aren't added, so the files are still added. I basically tricked it. I said, okay, redo the map cache. It updates the timestamps, adds them to the queue. I quit out, I go back in. The files already existed. Like I said, we did them earlier. So I basically tricked it to think it's up to date, which is absolutely hilarious. Okay, well that's funny. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to debug. And we're going to turn on the profiler once we hit load game, because we're going to see what is running when we click the file. So I just need to stop it on, like, I guess we could find the interface. It should be under the main menu, like, interface. So we can go there. Main menu. So main menu window. This enter button, I think, triggers the moment we hit load game. So, well, that opens the load game window. Let's go like one step further. In load game window, for each file that is created, we trigger we create a component inside of it. So you'll get to see the inventory like code in a while. It's been a long time since we've been in any GUI code, so yeah, we get to see it for the first time in a while. But essentially what happens is the game files list gets populated, and so we have to essentially grab, let me see here. This is where we like specify what happens when you scroll up, scroll down, when you click on something. Like these structures are very complex, and when I was implementing these, I'm like, God, this is actually really hard to do. Like, making an interface system is absolutely insane. So I just need to kind of reorient myself here with trying to see what we're doing. So, I mean, we have the component, the scrollable window component called game files list. So from here, we should have something that, so where do we add it? Game files list, right here. So we're looking for any references to that. There's the enable. There's the, it gets disabled. Load game window add. This adds tabs if we are online or not, which only happens in Emscripten build. After SVN, Mercurial used to be more friendly to use. I just need to dive into Git, but I don't really have a need, so I keep putting it off. Yeah, well, hopefully you get the chance eventually. Or whenever you feel like you have time to, right? Okay, so I guess we're just looking for scrollable window component. Get component 0. Okay, this is when we on open, it tries to scroll or set the selection to the first file in the list. This is when we press a button. So confirm, we have the load, but that's going to be in its own thing. So it's like for each, we have to find where this gets populated. So basically when the game is started and we click the load game button here, we call menu open menu load game, right? And then we have the save file update save game data. So this function must be what controls all the elements inside. So in here we have a bunch of file reading that goes on to determine what to load. And then for each save file, we are creating a new load file button. And each load file button has an on-click function. So that's what this is right here. This on-click function, so if we go over here, this is where it starts. It's just the beginning of it, and then this is what happens. So this was my typical syntax for these windows, was we have an add macro, which we specify a name of component and the type of component. This is wrapped around a, I think it's a shared pointer. So then after that, we put a parenthesis. This is the argument list for that particular interface item, and one of the arguments is to provide a lambda for on click. So that's what happens here. So in here we're going to do load game after setting the save file ID to a certain value. So presumably when we call load game is when all this starts, right? And maybe there's something else in load game that also takes a while, so we can profile that at the same time. But obviously we know this file has a bunch of items. It's probably the inventory stuff we're most concerned with. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. It's going to trigger that. And now we're going to start the profiler. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We enable CPU profiling. I'm going to go ahead and continue with this breakpoint. It's going to do its thing. And right when we see the screen fade, we're going to stop the profiler, more or less. In fact, I should have this breakpoint be the end of it, because it has finished loading the game, so it should literally be the next line. At least I hope. Because it's not threaded or anything, so it's doing everything line by line. And who knows, maybe threading the loading process ends up being the key, but I really don't think we want to do that. Like, threading a loading of an inventory would be so weird. Not that it's a bad thing, just... It doesn't sound like the right solution at all, so... Yeah. There's clearly some things going on here that are computationally very, very expensive. Oh yeah, well, no action, but we're just waiting for it to actually happen. But once the profiler has data for us, then yes, that will be interesting to look at. It's always fun. I love to look at the numbers. Like, if anything, when something is slow in my game, I get excited because I'm like, ooh, we have an optimization opportunity here. What are we gonna learn from this, right? Yeah. It's always fun. It's always an opportunity. And you can see this is this is bad. Just as a reminder, this is loading about 300 items in our inventory into the game. So for 300 items, you'd think, oh, that's not too bad, right? It's pretty bad. So, okay, we're gonna stop the CPU profiling now, and we're gonna be able to look at the details of the profiler. And let's go into here and see what's going on. I'm actually just going to do that, keep you right there. And we're gonna have to go to the call tree. So there are two threads in my game typically. One is the actual game itself, and the other is just, I think, the gamepad stuff. It's like inputs. So in here we can see a ton of calls to add item. So as we expected, the moment we start adding items to our inventory, all the fun stuff starts happening. So we're gonna expand that hot path. And let's just take a look at the code. Let's just start getting an idea of what we're about to deal with. So this function, insert into sorted inventory, has been hit 87,000 times. So that's clearly where everything is going right now. We can keep going. We drill down a little further, we get to this lambda function inside of an inventory creator. I'm definitely gonna have to expand this. So right now, let's see here. Ooh, I think I know what we're about to experience. I think I was very lazy with this. And I can see it in this structure here. Every time we add an item, we remove all the elements from our interface and basically regenerate all of them. So what this means is for every item, we are deleting all the items currently in the interface, whatever this interface is, the inventory scrollable window component, and we are then regenerating every single one. So this is already O squared complexity, because for every item we are doing exponentially more operations. It would be 87,000 squared. I don't know, I don't think the sorting is necessarily the issue, but the removing everything and doing everything over and over is the issue. And it's not 87,000 actual calls, it's 87,000 compute. So the way this works is everything is assigned compute time, and that's what that number represents. So it doesn't necessarily represent number of calls, it might represent number of like compute on top of, like when you drill down you can see it's just one, right? So it's like one call, but it's every call underlying that leads up to that. So like that one contributes to the 87,000. So it's number of compute lines, I guess you could say. What reason would one have for using weak pointer instead of passing a unique or shared pointer by reference? I never really got the point behind weak pointer when you can pass the others by reference to avoid upref. So my choice to use weak pointer here was some inventory components want to reference each other, right? And so providing a reference means you're locked into that reference. If it dies or changes, you will no longer have access to it. It's just a completely useless value after that. Passing a raw pointer would mean when it dies, well, we don't necessarily know when it dies, because we would have to explicitly regenerate it ourselves, which would mean there might be points where it's null pointer, there might be points where it points to junk. It might just cause a crash. So a weak pointer would be, it knows how long the original instance is alive. So let's think of it like the shared pointer is stored in one container, and it's the controlling container. Everything else is weak pointers down the pipeline. So if that shared pointer dies at any point, then all the weak pointers also die. So then we know at least it's dead. Exactly. Yes. Okay, so I think it's pretty clear why this is very slow. 45,000, 41,000. For every time we add an item to our inventory, we remove all of these components from the GUI, and then we add all of them back in to include the new one. So that would explain why this is so slow. And you can see after this, basically, there is no other calls. These literally are the things that are slow. So yeah, it's just the number of times we call remove button causes all these like new pointers to be created and destroyed, which is very slow, of course, heap allocations. And down here, we call this function, which, let me drill down this a little more to see what we're doing. Add component, which again, add component will also create new pointers. So constantly destroying and reallocating to the heap over and over and over tens of thousands of times, presumably. Probably not that many. It was 300, but 300 squared, or I guess it's more like what is it? Is that n factorial? What is n factorial? Is that like 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1? I think so, right? That's essentially what we're doing. We're doing n factorial. Or, excuse me, 5... Yeah, that sounds right. 20 times 3 is 60, times 2 is 120. Okay, so yeah, this is n factorial complexity right now. So can you just do it once at the end? That we're gonna have to figure out, right? So, that sounds like the solution, right? It's like, if we're expecting we're about to load a bunch of items into this thing, can we just batch up all the calls? Or not even batch up all the calls, but can we say, alright, don't touch this until the game has loaded? Let me think about that. Because it's literally only the interface creating part. It's nothing else. Hold on. I need to bring that window back up, actually. Right? So I guess we could. You're right. Because I was originally thinking we can't do that for add item because every item might do something special every time it's added. But I think we can batch at least the inventory part, the GUI part of it. So yes, I do agree with this. So let's go back to here where remove all components is called. This is an inventory creator, line 52. Let's start observing what we have to do here. The inventory creators exist to, this is basically like the callback, right? It's like every time an inventory slot gets updated, this is what gets called. So, normally, when you're playing the game and you add something to your inventory, like, yeah, this would get called, but it's like, okay, so we essentially don't want it to... The immediate fix is not to remove all the components. Why can't we just add a button? And I think the reason for that is we might be removing a... Oh, I think I know why. This gets called for removal too. This isn't necessarily adding or removing. It's either. This is just saying something has occurred. Now, I don't think this callback is very useful if we don't know whether it's been something that's been added or something that's been removed, right? Because that makes it harder, which is why I think I did this approach. Because even though we fix it here, in the future, let's say we grab an item on the overworld map, right? It's gonna still do this the next time we grab an item on the map. So I bet you even grabbing an item is pretty expensive. We can test this real quick. Let's go ahead and do that. Is my game still... Okay. So what we could do is let's just go into a place and kill some guys and then try grab an item, right? There should be a noticeable hiccup. I don't think it'll be like terrible, but it will definitely affect things. I guess we would need an equip. Because I don't know if this will affect... Because let's look at this. I can show you now what I mean. Inventory scrollable with no components. Each of these is what gets updated, right? So this is the accessories menu. You can see this has like 300 or so elements in it. It is massive, right? So every time this has to get updated, remove all components, re-add them all back in. That's essentially what's happening. But if I add a different type, these are a lot smaller. I would have to find a way to increase these first. So accessories, I guess what we could do is we could go destroy one of these, and I can show you how long that would take too. It's essentially calling the same function. So we can go over here and let's just go to disassemble. So we can choose any of these really, and let's just disassemble that one. So because we clicked that, it removed it from the list. I guess it's not as slow, but you do that over and over. Like, you notice there was a delay. Like, click. That was about 1.5 seconds. So 1.5 seconds times what? 300? That's a lot. Well, it's not. It'll get shorter. Obviously, the list size determines how long it takes, but 1.5 seconds to remove an item from the inventory. That adds up quickly, right? So I'm just trying to think, what is a reasonable fix case here? Are we only going to fix the load game bulk case? That would be easy, right? Because again, we could add a flag that says, hey, we're loading. Don't do this yet. That would be easy enough. And same with saving. However, do we want to optimize every single, like, actual item add and remove as well? I guess our biggest bang for our buck is to just have a flag for load and save game, right? That would be the easiest thing to do. So I guess let's start there. That would at least take care of this case. So in here, when we call load game, let's actually go in the load game function, and I guess we're going to disallow this callback from occurring. So how are we going to communicate that all the way here? So this doesn't know anything about the game instance right now. So, or does it? Let me see. Do we know anything about AIL? Because there might be other headers that are including it. Okay, we do. Which means we do have access to game, at least if I include the pointer. So include the global pointer game. And then I should be able to do here, we can look for some kind of flag here that says, hey, if this is enabled, we're not doing this. We can just like early return or something. I think that's the approach we're going for. I don't think there's a way to detect if the game is currently loading. As far as I know, let's look. Save file. Or save game. No, save file? Save file. Alright, let's see here. Quit allowed is false. We could technically use that, but that's... the flag is not for... Oh, saving file. There it is. There's a variable called saving file. Which I guess it looks like it has the same exact meaning as that, just the opposite of quit allowed. So presumably saving file gets set to false when this is done. So let's see. Let's look in our entire project. If not saving file, okay. So we don't end the game until saving file is done. That makes sense. Quit allowed. So it looks like we rely on this quit allowed function to really do that for us. But it's called save allowed, or saving file. So, do I have direct access to it? I don't, but I do have set quit allowed and quit requested. That's funny. So how did we access that then? Because I assume we have a cheat. Yeah, we just access it directly. So I might want to expose this variable, or at least make a getter for it. I think I'll just go ahead and expose the variable. I don't see a real reason to hide it. I don't think anything else is going to really touch the state of it. Like, it's a very obscure variable. If this was a variable that had more presence, I would probably be very cautious of making it public, but I don't think making this public is that dangerous. It's very niche. So we're gonna say if we are not saving a file, we're gonna go ahead and do this. We do have to remember to actually execute this after we're done saving the file though. So we're gonna have to look at that as well. So back to save file. Let's first address save game, but we have to do load game as well. So does load game set this flag too? Presumably it does. Okay, it does. Good. But yeah, let's focus on save game first. So just adding that flag already makes it so it should not have to do all this. This will reduce the cost significantly. But we do have to force it to execute at the end now. So, this is a static variable. At least, I believe it is. Because if we look at inventory creator, we have these setup macros. They set up static versions of these. It's just a messy macro, but all in all, it just creates a bunch of named functions that we can use to call, like, player underscore inventory slots update, right? As an example. In this case, I assume it was for the player. I should have double checked which one it was. I think we still have access to them. I just have to pull up diagnostic tools. Let me see, debug, Windows, show diagnostic tools. We can still pull this window back up. And let's just look at if it's a specific one or if it's like literally all of them. So, inventory creator. Let's see. Let's go a little further. Source file has changed. That's fine. So, player inventory slots update. Oh, it's literally just this function specifically. It's not any of these inventory update functions, which I guess is fine. Hi there, average standard user. Welcome. We're currently doing some profiling on some very slow item code. Yes. So, I think we just call this at the end because it already exists. So we just say player under... Is it... Oh yeah, it was player, right? Player underscore inventory slots update. See, what's confusing is I don't see it here, but technically it's here, it's just the macro generated it. So this is like... We're seeing the macros output. This is what the code looks like after macro generation. So, yeah, we're gonna end up calling this one. That's why we don't do macros, because it just hides everything and we have no clue what's going on. Anyway, so I'll do it down here after the saving is obviously done. Right before the return true, we can just do a inventory creator. It looks like we're gonna have to bring in the header for it. Inventory creator. And then down here, we'll say player inventory slots update. And then we have to pass in args. So now we have to figure out this part, because we need to pass in the component we are updating. And presumably if we're updating the player inventory slots... Inventory creator. I need to figure out how this gets called then. Because what is this constructor actually doing other than setting these? Okay, but let me look at this, because this class, all it has is two callable functions with these arguments. So I need to figure out what these arguments we would pass in are that we need to do. Like, because here, what does it say? We might have to do some debugging next, is what I think we're gonna have to do. Because is this for every component? I don't think so. I think it's for certain listeners. So we have to figure out where this is invoked, right? Which we can do. We can even see it. A standard invoke is happening here, which comes from on inventory slots update for a given category. So if we can provide the category of the items, we can call on inventory slots update from that. Okay, sounds good. So we have to call that callback function, which means we're gonna have to iterate through every category, which is fine. This is an enum, or no, it's not. It's actually a string. Somewhere in we have item categories. If we look at items.txt, one of our config files, item categories are located inside of itemcategory.txt and itemcategory.txt, so we can loop through these. I'm sure these actually exist somewhere in our program. Like, surely we needed this for something else, right? So let's look for category. Let's go to types. We have item enchant category. Let's just try category. I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, let's just search for text then. How would we have gotten this in the past? Item category. I'm gonna put oh, there is no space. So I'm essentially looking for this key. Alright, so that is the same text file that we just looked at. Or no, it's not. These are item text files, so we're not really interested in that. Okay, it basically looks like the way I do it is I just iterate through all these. Do I want to make a helper function for this so I don't have to do that every time? Because that sounds kind of dumb, if I'm being honest. That does sound kind of dumb. Let's make a helper function. And then I think that'll just make it more clear, like, hey, if we need to do this in the future, this is how we do it, right? It'll be easier to work with, in my opinion. I want to pull up those search results one more time. I didn't mean to really close it. Let me just put it here for now. Or even better, let me go over here. We don't really use this screen much. So... oh, let me actually close those. So there are a few places, and it looks like every once in a while we do like a for loop. So it looks like I would be fixing up like one... oh, here they are. There's an item categories structure right here. No, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. I think? Because it populates it with key, but it also has a standard set of string. Item categories. Is this just a list of like every item sorted by category? I guess that works. But technically, if I iterate through the item categories keys, that's how I get all the keys. So that could work too, and that would be easier. So it would look something like... oh, and I actually do that here. I see now. I understand. Okay, so let's go one step further and make a util for this. It looks like it will only affect 2 locations, but that's fine. I would like to standardize it a little bit more because I don't like this. It's kind of obscure. Can you just do it? Or, excuse me, is this a solo project? It's a solo programming project. I work with the person who actually designed this game is somebody different. He came up with the concepts, the story, and the ideas, and does the level design. And I also have somebody who is actually local to where I live that does the music. So it is a partial team effort in that sense. And I also just commissioned some pixel artists that I met long ago for doing some of the pixel art for a fee. So it's a bit of a team effort, but I do all the programming solo, so the game wouldn't exist without me. I basically went up to my game design guy and be like, hey, you have any game ideas? Let's try and make a game. That's pretty much all I said. Because essentially I was just in a state where I had no projects to work on. So, yeah. It's been a team effort. And some folks who have found interest in it have also, like, come up and asked to, like, test the game as well. So, that's always appreciative. Just help me find, like, random bugs and stuff. So yeah, that's fun. Let's make a util. I'm gonna go to our util header, which is somewhere right here. And in here we just have all sorts of fun little things, right? So I'm going to add, although this is a very generic util, this is supposed to be the util we use for like anything we do. So I actually shouldn't put in here because this is like a very generic util, but I will make a new util that maybe is called like, I could just call it AIL util, but I could just call it item util, but then what's stopping me from putting it inside of the item class? That might be a way to do it. Let's look at the item header and see if we can just stuff it in there. Also, the IT class is also in here, which is an actual item, so we might look at that. So here's it.h. Oh, okay. IT is literally just the item, so we're not gonna worry about that. Let's go to the item class. So in here, I'm looking for like a place to insert essentially a static function. Item set, item. So yeah, if we can add a static function here, that would be nice. I'm gonna rearrange these while I'm here. By the way, this code is pretty old, so we're once again looking at pretty old code. I can tell because private members are on top of public members, and I've got some weird data structures in here, I promise. So we can see there's some const standard strings. Actually, these might be on purpose because they're generated. Yeah, they wouldn't be references because that's dangerous. Anyway, I'm looking for a place to insert this. Maybe there's other static functions. Select equip is different. This feels roughly where I want to be, like get categories, right? I feel like that's a very appropriate function to insert here. So let's just do static, and this might be a good time for a view. Ooh. Do we want to try a view here? The only problem is we run into that auto thing again, so I don't know if we can. I'm just gonna hope it works, but if it doesn't work, we'll switch it. It's easy enough, right? Anyway, we just do auto, get item categories, and essentially I wanted to just return a string of categories. So we can also say this will be, well, it's a static function, so we can't do a local const on it, because there's no state for it to control, which is why that's not possible. So in here, the CPP file, item get item categories. Again, we'll try ranges. If it doesn't work out, we'll just flip it over, because we'll just end up using a transform algorithm anyway. So I'm going to include, I want to say it's algorithm. Also, this is not the right place for this. We already have ranges, so I think algorithm will be needed for the transform. So we're going to try and return by grabbing item categories. If that's included, it is. And then we're going to pipe that into a standard views transform. And we're transforming the data into just being a vector. So just a vector of items is really what we're looking for. Although actually, I don't think that's possible. transform will just allow us to mutate a key, which I don't think is even possible in itself. Or mutating the pair? That would be weird, right? I don't think that's even possible. If anything, we're just going to generate a new view of something else. Like each data value is going to return something else. So maybe that's not what transform is going to be for. Let me think for a second. Applies a transformation function to each element. A filter view. That's not really what we want either. What we really want is just the keys from this map. And if I'm being honest... Oh, it's a safe map. So we actually have that already. Ooh, it's a safe map. Okay, well that changes everything. At least it should change everything. I thought this was implemented. Let me see. Because I swore I made a get keys thing. Count, size. I guess you could just iterate through it too, right? Nothing wrong with that. And return them. Because it would be iterating through all those elements anyway. Okay, let's just do that. Yeah, this idea doesn't work. The view idea doesn't work. So we'll just do a standard vector of strings. We could do string views because the strings are stored in that map, right? Opportunity for string view. Is this gonna bite us in the butt though? Because let me think. We get them as string views, we take them, we iterate through them, and do what? We're going to... Yeah, I don't like that, because what we're gonna end up doing something silly, like, trying to index into another map, and once we index into another map, it's not gonna have string views, so we're gonna have to convert it, which means it's just gonna be a conversion for no reason. Yeah. So, like I said, I never get an opportunity to use string view whenever I think about it. String view will always have a lifetime because it's going to reference it from item categories, which is a global variable, a static global variable that we created. So, oh, it's not even static, it's just global. It exists for the program's lifetime. So the string view will last. But we can't do that anyway. I'm just gonna do standard for each and populate this. I think there's a better function though. because I typically just use for each, but I think you would use like, you could use like an accumulation kind of deal. I'm trying to remember every time I get to this part, like which one I'm supposed to be using, because I know there's a good one to use. There's copy. Okay, we want copy. We want copy, but we want to modify it. We don't want to actually copy, like... Applies a function to a range of elements, storing results in a destination range. I think that's actually what we want. Replace copy. Copy is a range replacing elements satisfying specific criteria. So, transform. Input, output, output, and predicate. Which technically you can do. You can start with an empty list, right? And you can accumulate all the... just the keys. But this transform should work fine. So standard transform. So we're gonna need a vector. Standard vector of standard string is the return type now. Standard vector, standard string. Let's call this categories. And we start at categories, or no, we start at item categories begin to end. And our destination is going to be a standard back inserter of categories. And the function will be so read those in as a pair. a pair of... I might be able to auto this. I'm gonna hope I can auto this. Maybe it'll work. Auto pair. And we want to return pair.first to be inserted. I think that will do it. And then we'll just return categories. Should make a copy of it. We could also like cache this somewhere. Like after we generate it once, we just keep returning that. That's also a possibility. Not that it matters that much, but like imagine I want to call this like a whole bunch of times, right? So there's some merit to it. How about this? Let's make categories static, and if the size is 0, we'll populate it. So if categories dot empty, we'll go ahead and do the transform. Otherwise, we just return it. Because this stack variable will exist only one time for this function, so I like that. I think that's okay. I don't think that will turn into like a bug fest or anything. I just want to verify that standard vector empty returns whether or not it's empty. Returns true if the container is empty. Okay, good. Yeah. That way we don't have to do it if it's... Yeah, because it starts empty, right? So that makes sense. I can be explicit about it too. So that should be it. Now that we've gotten the item categories, let's replace the 2 places where we use this right now with this new quote-unquote util function, right? So instead of doing this, now we just do for auto category in item get item categories. I guess I'm gonna add an assert though. If item categories dot size is not equal to we're gonna look at this. Let's say data item category. Yeah, let's just do this because I want to be certain that this is returning the right, at least the right number of items. So I think this is a good check to perform. So if we somehow, for some reason, call this function when it's not populated, or it's populated with the incorrect amount of data, then we want to actually just crash because we're doing something wrong. So this should be number of elements, get property, or get keys dot size. Then we're going to error out and say warning expected. Let's go for a standard format here. So we expected blank values in what is it? Item categories. Current size is this value instead. And we're gonna say that's a fail condition because that is not what we should be doing. So we're gonna compare, we expected this, and we got this. So that's an error. I'm going to have the game push out and crash the game if we find out that's the case, because that should never be the case. The number of items inside here should be the same number of items as in our vector at any given point in time. Or the number of item categories basically has to be populated. And I'm going to say item categories should be populated before this function is used. There we go. Hold on, won't you end up creating it from empty every time with this function? No, because the categories variable is static to this function. And so now we go back to here. We go to get item categories and we iterate through, and that should be that. And then let's go to, oops, that's a pin. The other place where we iterate in item, and we're gonna do the same thing. So this is actually in initialize items, and we can see there's an item categories.reset, right? So we expect that item categories should get populated before. Oh wait, this is the loop with the item categories. So we're actually not gonna do that here because this is what actually populates the item categories. Yeah, static in a function. So any member that is static inside of a function means that function, it's local to that function. It will only exist one time, and it will only be initialized one time. So you can never have more than one instance of it in there. It's also not accessible, which sometimes is a downside, but if it's literally just local to that function, you can't access it from anywhere outside. As far as I know. Maybe with reflection that'll change. I'm sure reflection, you can do all sorts of silly things. Oh, there's another one in menu. Okay, here we go. But this isn't initialized menus, so initialization order might come into play, which I guess we could check, but we could just maybe not do this because it's kind of risky, right? For an initialize function, I'm willing to go through the actual list. Where's did this not, hold on, final reference? Am I blind, or is this just not popping up? I don't know where this window is. Oh, it's over here. Okay. I think. Hello, hello, hello. Initialize menus. Hello? Okay. I don't know where this is. Or is it down here? I think it just doesn't know what this is. Alright, hold on. Okay, I'm like, I don't think it's working. So initialize menus gets called in line 332. It looks like it gets called before items. There's item drop initialize. I'm not seeing item initialize. Initialize levels. Initialize menus. I guess we could find out. We could just try replacing it and see what happens. If it doesn't work, we just revert it. So I'm gonna change this to say category. Oh, that's a lot. I didn't expect all those. Is that the same code? Oh wow. This is where we initialize all the windows, and then below that we do stuff. Okay, sure. That's fine. And then, yeah, we do this a couple times, so my hope is that's actually initialized to where I can just use this instead. Get item categories. It would just be cleaner. Like, an easier way to understand this than, oh, we have to go into this data structure every time. Oh. Okay, never mind. We weren't supposed to change that. And I think there were a few more changes. I might just have to... Let me see. This got modified. Yeah. Let's just... Gosh darn it, I shouldn't have done that. It'll be faster if I undid all that and just change this one again. So undo, undo, and then go for this. I didn't realize that's what I was changing, so... Locally, it's just these three. Cool. I should have double-checked that. So maybe we'll even get this performance fix done tonight. Like, it's not actually that bad now that we've seen what we've had to do. Just okay, so now that we've done that, the next thing is to go back to our save file, and we're gonna iterate through all categories. So for auto, at least for this, right? I mean, there's plenty more optimizing we could do, but this is like, this is the big optimization to make. So for auto category in item, yeah, item categories. We just have to call that a callback function now, which I think we found in... Where did we find that? I just have to find that again. Is it still open? I think it's still... Yeah, it's still there. Maybe. Data is no longer available because of build... Oh, I hit build by accident. Dang it. Okay. I just have to find this. Let's look up where this is called. Because essentially it's gonna iterate through every category and call its appropriate component, so we don't need that right now. Is it doing the thing again where it's just not popping this up? Okay. So this gets called say equal to, I think we, no, it's different. It's under add item. Let's go to add item. Item.cpp or .h even. Let's go to add item. Okay, so the add item function calls insert into sorted inventory, which then calls inventory slots update. Ah, here it is. Yes. So we called this function, which is the callback function for all like the inventory stuff, to do its updating, which will end up calling this function. So you just say menu inventory slots updated for category. We do that for every item category, and that's it. We should be done. We have to do the same for the loading of a file, so we'll also put that down here at the end. It looks like there's... Okay, we have a fail. Warning, file does not exist for loading, which just fails. I'm going to do this before we go to the overworld map. Okay, so now let's try this again. And we're gonna see if the loading time now improves. As this was where all the time was being taken up. If it's not too bad, then I might just call it good enough to proceed with getting back to working on the game stuff. If it could still use work, if it feels bad, we'll look at it some more. Sure, there's plenty more we can optimize. Just waiting for everything to load here. Okay. So I'm just gonna hit this. There's our breakpoint start. And we got an abort. Okay, I mean, fair. Let's see what happened. Could not find item berries in inventory while selecting a loadout item from the consumables menu. This should not be happening. Ooh. When I get it, this should not be happening, I know something funny just happened. Alright. Well, this will be fun. So... yeah, it tried to find an item in an inventory while selecting a loadout item. So the loadout items in this game allow you to basically place like, okay, I'm gonna bring 3 items, loadout 1, loadout 2, loadout 3. So essentially, at whatever this point of the code was, it's trying to update that. Like, it's doing load game, and then I assume it's trying to set, yeah, it's calling set loadout item. Apparently in slot 2, I had berries. And it's trying to do that, and apparently I have no berries in my inventory. So, since I didn't have that, apparently... Well, actually, it did go in here. Apparently I do have berries, because this condition checked out. So, something here didn't work out? Let me see. Where does this end? Right here. Okay. So, loadout slots. In slot 2, we have berries. We actually have 10 berries in there, so that is correct. That is what it's supposed to do. Get loadout item. Okay. And then what? Sets the loadout slot selection for this loadout item. So there are no... Oh, so this is interesting. This function is actually tied to the inventory scrollable window component that we are not populating now. So what does this do? It's trying to find this item inside the inventory via the inventory scrollable window component, dynamic casting it, and then setting or finding the item inside that window component, and then setting its selected value to true, or setting its selected value. So essentially, this is trying to modify an interface that doesn't exist yet, because we chose not to do that. So, as expected, nothing is quite as simple as it appears on the surface, right? So, unfortunately, we have something tied to something else. So we gotta figure out what we're gonna do with this now. So essentially, in the best case scenario, we would do all the loadout item stuff after we've populated that inventory. So let's see if we can do that. Let's go back to save file. And let's see when we populate the loadout items. So let me just type probably like loadout inside of here, please. Okay, so if we look here, we iterate through the inventory and let's see here. Loadout slot number. Okay, so then we do game get loadout item. What? Item, amount, enhancement level, item name, equip slot, and locked. So this is all fine. These are all properties of an item. And then we iterate through loadout. We say if item is equal to game get loadout item. So let's jump back to this function since we're in here anyway. Load file. Because presumably we got here. So loadout slot is 2. I'm assuming the first 2, let me see. So if data has property loadout slot. So maybe when we're loading these items, there are loadout slot properties. That's what it looks like. So I'll go to a save file. We'll just pull one up so we can see what it looks like. And presumably in here, it says, okay, so it has a loadout slot property, and we assume 255 means it's invalid, like it doesn't have one. So if we find one that isn't 255, like the berries, I guess we're gonna load it. Oh, that's not a great number, I guess. 1. Loadout. Oop. Oh, come on. Loadout slot equals 1. Okay, yeah. Do we have a 0? We do. So we have a 0, 1, and a 2. The 2 I would have to find by adding a new line, I guess. Yeah, so right there. Okay. So, a couple of ideas. We could not add these to our inventory until later. like, if they belong in a loadout slot, just iterate through the store, like, which items are loadout slot items, and do all this later, right? And then the idea is we call this function first, and then set the loadout items. Once the inventory slots are in a state that they can be, which would be fine, I think. Either that, or our other option is to decouple that function, which I have to find again. Right here. So our other option is to decouple this from the set loadout item function. If we do that, then the question is, where would we put this instead? It either becomes the save game's responsibility, or let's see. We could also just do this when we open the loadout selection screen. Because we're not gonna, this is invisible. Like, until we actually look at the loadout selection screen, we don't have to worry about what is selected in that slot right now. So maybe that's what we want to do. So let's just change when we set this. So let's say we're in the pause menu and we click the loadout button. I think that would be under pause menu, hub pause menu. Because I think if we're in the normal pause menu, it doesn't have a loadout button because we're on the world map. So we're going to be going to a place where we select that. So in here, we don't have the option to choose the loadout screen to look at it. But in hub, we do have a change loadout button. So because of that, when we click it, this would be an ideal time to update that. So maybe let's try that now. I'm just trying to think if this has any other side effects. I don't think it does. So we can see here, we open menu item hub loadout. So do we do it on open? Because that's a possibility too. Or do we do it here? I think the callback, oops, I hit run something. I ran something. Okay, anyway. I think this would be ideal, but we also have to do this inside of one other location. On the overworld map, we have, so I'm going to pin this and this. We're going to need those two. When we click the enter button, oh, not overworld, or is it the overworld? Hold on. Resume character inventory settings, quit. Overworld menu. Oh, okay, this is like the overworld menu pause menu. I need the main menu, no, the map level window. There it is. Yes, so I need the map level window where the enter button, we do restock loadout items. So you can even see we have like the loadout stuff kind of started here because it calls set loadout item. That's interesting. So that would have done it too at the same time. So moving it into here, I guess, would be ideal. Or alternatively, right, we do it inside of the restock loadout items call. When do we use this? Because if we use this in two places, we don't have to copy paste two pieces of code in case we change it. Overworld map level window and restock items is called in Adventures in the Story.h. Oh, that's the, okay. Definition, declaration. It's only used in one place. So here's my idea. We go in here and we go in hub pause menu, change loadout. I think the only issue with this one is the restocking isn't, no. This makes sense. I think this makes sense. So let's do that. Let's say game restock loadout items. Essentially, we're doing the same thing. Okay, I like that. And then inside of restock loadout items, that's when we do this, because we know that's going to get called. So maybe we should make that function name more clear now, because what if we just use this randomly to be like, oh, this function restocks loadout items. Is it clear that we want to do this to refresh the screen too? I guess it's just assumed it will refresh the screen, right? So maybe we don't have to worry about that. As for which slots, let's see. I guess we do that in here because it's per slot. Eyes less than get loadout size. Not as blank get loadout item per slot. Okay. So yes, this should go in there and I is just the slot. I might rename I to slot, because that's just what it actually is. So I will say slot. And I can even go, ooh, don't do that. Okay, the rename sucks for this. I don't want to find the one eye out of the 10 million eyes in there. So let's just do, you know what? Eye with slot. Good old find oh, not that one though. Match whole word, please. Goodness. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. And selection. Okay. We're good. Hi there, Superman Bias. Welcome. We're currently optimizing an item adding function. It was a little slow, so we're just fixing it up. We did a little deep diving into all the internals, implementation details of this thing. So I think we finally figured it out. We're just cleaning up. Let's see here. Anything else? Anything else? I think that's it. That's all we really want to do. Set the loadout item. We kind of know the item already. Do we just do that in here? Like, what is this returning? It's returning true if the item... Wait, what? If get item actual name is equal to actual name, meaning it's in there? So if get loadout item is not blank when we restock, set it. Which means it does exist. So am I contradicting myself by doing this when I can just say, alright, just cast it immediately? I think so. Oh, but item is what component it is. Okay, that makes more sense. We need to figure out what the item pointing to by the loadout slot is for that component to set its selected value. That's what we're doing. So we're good there. Let's try and compile this. I think we're on the right track here. Calling this in both of those will mean it does the same thing. It should have no adverse effects here. Anytime we open the... In fact, I would consider that a bug. Every time we open the hub, we're supposed to expect that it gets restocked. You can hold up to 10 of each item in your loadout. So if it's not 10 and you have at least 10, it should go back up to 10. Otherwise, it just goes to the max of whatever you have. So yeah, I would expect this to work fine. And a little bit cleaner than I originally anticipated. I was expecting we were gonna have to do way more. Would have been scary work. So you can see I clicked that. That was like what? 3 seconds? Much better than our like... Oh, but that took a while. So maybe we're not quite done here. Let me see. Do we have our items? I guess that's the first thing to make sure of. We do have our items. That's good. And we do have some tests to make sure all the item functions are working, so we'll run those later, of course, to make sure we're not just randomly losing items everywhere. So that all looks good. Let me try quit. Okay, it's still a little bit of time, because that black screen was still a good, like, what, 4 seconds at least? 4 or 5 seconds? So this is still enough to where I don't think it's quite fast enough, in my opinion. Oh, and also, I don't know if maybe saving quite has the same effect. We might have to profile this one individually, right? Because that is taking a while. It might be doing something else, or it might be messed up, who knows, right? Because, let me see here. Because this is inside that load block, so it's like, okay, we call this... Oh wait, is that load? I did do this for save, right? Save file. Surely I did it for save. Can I get the function, please? Is it called save game? Why'd I call one load file and one save game? I think that was my complaint last time. I had like load file and save game. Which is it? Okay. In save game, what do? We do it down here. Which, I mean, that's fine, but is this... Does the variable set quit allowed as false do everything regarding saving? And then... When do we set it back to true? Down here? There is an if def else scripting. Online mode, which then does all these too. Okay. So it just has its own version of it. It does an early return, right? No early returns. No. Okay. I think, though, it's threaded. Saving online is threaded. Which... That's a whole nother thing. Maybe we're gonna have to look at that later. Okay, so a little more complex than I was expecting. I guess let's go ahead and profile this while we're here. Let's do the same thing. When we click... Where is main menu? When we click this, go ahead and do load game or save game. No, we're looking for load. Load game button, update save game data. Load game. Should be right here. Now let's do the same thing. Let's profile it again. So I'm going to start the profiler. And then let's let it run. Oh, so it is done already. I wonder what is causing that hang up afterward then. I guess we keep going. Keep going to the overworld map, question mark? I wonder if I can just F10 from here and see what happens. Menu select on click. Okay, menu select, current menu. We're just exiting the current menu that we just clicked. Do stuff, do stuff. Let's just get out of here. Okay, what would be useful from here? I guess once we load up the overworld map. So let's wait for load to be done. Prepare level. Let's see if we can get to loading screen. Okay, so we're profiling whatever is going on right here, I guess. Because we're just kind of stuck. Okay. Let's see what that's about. Because after that is the actual loading of the map. So I just want to see what this is, because it's not terrible, but it's also not great, right? So let's take a look. We have overall map, state change, inventory clear, stage loot. Okay, that's interesting. Stage loot. Remove item. This is called a whole bunch, which ends up going to the inventory creator in the end to handle that. And then we're back here again, right? So this is... for removing items that are... So for some reason, just out of the blue, this is taking a while. This clearing stage loot itself. I wonder why. Sorted inventory. Remove item from sorted inventory. What does that look like? Because this is still very heavy right now. Inventory slots updated. Every time we remove an item, this gets called. And it does it one by one, presumably to make sure, like, the state is preserved, kinda. It kinda makes sense why this might be happening, because stage loot, although I don't know why it's stage loot specifically. I want to find that out next. So I'm gonna breakpoint when we get here so we can take a look at more stuff. We might have to work on this one tomorrow though, because it is getting later, and today we have a short coding session, but we'll work on it more next time. Alright. Let's see why there's a million items inside stage loot. Because we haven't played a stage, so something is adding to the stage loot. It's like, okay, if we call add item, does that add stuff to the stage loot? Because I think it does. Like, let's say we load our game, right? It calls add item over and over to add stuff to our inventory. And that is adding stuff to our quote-unquote stage loot, which means, yeah, it's gonna take a while to populate that, or get rid of it. So we're here. We just did the load of our items, so let's go in here. And what do we got? Item list. Here's our item list. Tons of stuff to remove. And we're in category stage loot. So, sorted inventory, stage loot. Stage loot has 373 items, which is our inventory, which means everything we just added to our inventory is in the stage loot. Because technically, we did whatever stage we were just in would have had these items because that's what we collected. The game is essentially supposed to show you what items you got in whatever stage you were on. Obviously, we weren't playing the game. Why are we populating stage loot? I feel like we should fix that. And I also feel like that should be a brand new unit test, because I don't think that should even be normal behavior. So I'm gonna go to item tests, and for something as simple as adding like a health potion to us, item give, I want it to not affect the stage loot if we are in a map that is not a stage. So we were going from main menu to overworld map. That is not an actual dungeon, so we're only looking for dungeons or bosses when it comes to adding to stage loot. Now, campaign 1.1 is a blank map that has no type. So I'm actually gonna make another map that has a type for testing, and I'm actually gonna call it the dungeon type test map. So we can actually see if this works. I'm basically making a test that's gonna fail, and then we're gonna make it pass, right? And then in here, I'm gonna go ahead and I have to do .at because we haven't finished initializing this. Or we could do it outside. Let me see, where do we lock it? I think we lock it in... Where do we lock this structure? Unlock, and then we're set initialize down here. Okay. So when we're done, let's just set it up. So dungeon type test map dot type. So we have get map type. I want to change the map type. Get map data. Is this writable? It's const, so that's not it. Dot. Do I just not have write access to this? This is, yeah, in Adventures in Lestoria.h. I guess I would have to friend myself for this. So we need a friend class, player test, so we need item test. So we have to forward declare item test. And then, yeah, that would at least define it. And then we can say we're doing a friend class item test right here. Because it doesn't know what that is, so player, wait, item test. Kind of made redundant namespaces, but it works. For some reason, or I guess maybe for a good reason, I can't just do this to forward declare it. It doesn't work. I'm not sure why. But yeah, class item test, item tests, item test. So now that it's a friend class, I should be able to go back in here and actually access the members so I can modify the data. Oh, has this always existed? Shoot, if this existed, then I didn't need to do that. Maybe I added that for a reason. Okay, set map data is what we need, so maybe I didn't need this. Maybe that's also why I didn't need this. Is this used anywhere? I must have added this earlier and then got rid of it when I realized I could just do that. Yeah, it looks like it was a friction point and I decided to go this route instead. So that makes sense. Back to our test, item tests, and... Okay, so set data. We can set whatever we want, so... Let's make a map tag with what? With height, tile with tile height. I don't think we care too much about setting these parameters, like it could just be blank. What we really care about is modifying other stuff. So, dungeon map data. The constructor is just some basic stuff that we don't really need. But inside of there, we should be able to modify the value we really need. Oh. Wait, that actually doesn't have what I need. Because I'm looking for the map type. And that's not in here. How do we get the map type? Normally. Is it just not a parameter? Get map type. Alright. Let me see. The map type. Okay, so there's a map type value inside of a map. So we don't have access to this, which is what we actually need. Okay, cool. Well, that's fine. Just give ourselves access to that. Make a friend class here. Because this is just testing. I don't really care about exposing these too much to tests. They need them anyway. And now we can do a lot more. So let's do map type. And let's purposely set it to dungeon. Or, I guess... Is this a map type? Yeah. Map type. Dungeon. So basically the unit test is going to cover two scenarios. Campaign 1-1, which is not a dungeon. At least I don't think that's the default. Maybe I should double check. Oh, dungeon is the default type. So maybe I should make a non-dungeon so we can test that, right? So let's just say hub type test map. Because if we're in the hub, we should not expect the stage loot to populate or the monster loot. Only in dungeons or bosses. So now we can write a unit test that's going to confirm that's the case. So I'm going to actually do a new test just for this because I don't want to put in an item give test when it's only testing that item giving works. So this is like item add and remove effects. Let's call it stage loot and monster loot. I wonder if there's a test case for that already that's like, hey, does the stage loot have stuff in it now? Because I feel like that's kind of important, right? For the game, it's like, when we kill a monster, we should expect stage loot. That must be in a different place. Let me see. I don't think so. Okay. Well, that might be something to address later, but for now, if we add health potions, we're presumably in a default map. What map are we in? Test game. Initialize class, initialize items. I think I would have to call like load level to change what the starting level is in. So campaign 1.1 would be where we're going. So I added a util for this recently. It's under, I think, tests. Or maybe test. Well, that's in range. That's not what I'm looking for. Maybe it's under, let me see. Oh, it's under game. Okay. So I write all these util testing functions because when it comes to testing, there's usually multiple things I have to set. And so if I do it this way, it's a lot easier. So load level, map key name, campaign 1.1, and game instance is test game. It wants the pointer. Okay, this is a unique pointer, so .get gets the raw pointer. Yeah, and that puts us in campaign 1.1, which we should expect the stage loot is populated. So can we get the stage loot? Inventory, get inventory? No. Let me see. Get item count. That's not what we want either. Get item. Get inventory. It's a vector of items, which is not what we want either. So we want like... Not what I'm looking for. Sorted inventory? I guess sorted inventory. I feel like there's a better way to get that though. Get... Let me just look at all these functions. There's gotta be something. Maybe it's item? Item... Static functions like blank is blank. No, it wouldn't be in here. Inventory, get item count, add item, use item copy, remove, get inventory slot. Oh, get. Okay. So it's literally called get. That's a little vague. Not what I was expecting at all. And then we're looking at the stage loot inventory. Okay. So we're gonna see assert that there are 3 items inside of this inventory. So size is 3. And I think that has to be casted to a size T. So player or stage loot has 3 items in it. Also, this isn't a monster loot test. I think we do test monster loot in a different location because we do kill stuff later for a unit test. So I think we already tested that. Now I want to try loading to level, the test level I made. So we'll go to dungeon type test map. Or no, it's not a dungeon anymore. It's a... What is this? Hub type test map. So we'll transition to that map. And then we're going to try adding items again. And this time, if we load a different level, I think the stage loot gets cleared. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So if we add 3 health potions, we should assert that stage loot has 0 items in it. That is the expected behavior. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch to this project. We're going to switch to unit testing, and we're going to first build, which will detect this in the test explorer. And then once we're done building that, we can run just that test, and that test should fail. We wrote it so that it would be a failing test case. And then our objective is to make it not fail. So that should be pretty easy. We also have to test removing. I think removing will... I don't think removing does anything in terms of the stage loot. Because I think the idea was if you collect an item in a stage, you just get that item. It doesn't disappear necessarily. But I could be wrong. There's no expected behavior for that in the game. It's like undefined behavior for our game, so I'm actually not gonna really have to test for that. But let's take a look if we go into item. Let's see. So inventory, add item. Right now, inserts into the stage inventory category, which this inserts it into, I think, stage loot and monster loot, depending on, yeah, this variable right here. If the boolean is true, it goes into the monster loot. If it's false, it's a stage loot. And we can see that happens here, so this just returns... Okay, so here we go. We have inventory pushback. So essentially, we'd just be adding an if statement here saying, okay, is the dungeon the current level's map type whatever, right? And if it is, then you're good to go. We also have to make sure we're in a level. If we're not even in a level, then don't bother. So we have to make sure the game state is like not... Well, you shouldn't be interacting with items on like a story stage, so I think that would be considered undefined behavior too. So in here we should be adding an if statement saying, okay, if the current level's type is not a dungeon or a boss, we don't add it. So the build succeeded. Let's look at Test Explorer. Go to our item tests, and let's go ahead and run that unit test. So this is item add and remove effects stage loot test. That's gonna run now. And we can see it failed with an error log, which is not ideal because that means it actually crashed at some point. It looks like it crashed trying to load a level, so I mean that's fair. If I just made a junk level and it might like complain about it. Let's look at the debug log. Cannot find monster type blue slime. Wait, what? Blue slime? Is this the right file? Why would we be looking for a blue slime? Alright, hold on. Unit testing... Back up. Where is this? X64, unit testing. Oh, it's not a text file. Config or debug.log. Yeah, this is the same file. The error is literally said cannot find monster type blue slime. So it's parsing... Oh, it's actually trying to load that map. I see, I see. Okay, we need to load a pretend map that doesn't have a monster in it. Because it's actually trying to put us in that map. Like, we have a test map, right? And that test map has... Let me see. Like, this would be an example of what we could do. Like, we have a test map, and... I don't see it, but it was here. I think we have to actually make it. That's interesting. Okay, maybe we just have to load existing levels. I guess if we load initialize monster data, then that will work, because then it actually knows what these are. So we might actually need that. I think I'm just missing that. Because it does know what blue slimes are, but we could load that level. I don't think it hurts to load it. I just have to actually initialize the monster data. Let's try it again. Because Campaign 1.1 is a real map, so I think it's actually trying to run that map. And then I made this up. It might actually complain this map doesn't exist, because it looks like it's really trying to load that level. So error log on initialized monster data. Okay. Well, that's fun. Strategy for flower turret does not exist in the strategy database. Ah, yes. So we have to also initialize monster strategies to initialize monster data. It's all a dependency tree. Which is like, how many of these are we gonna need? Try it again. Okay. This time we got a little further. Let's see. A previously set value has been overwritten. Key campaign 1.1. This is inside of item tests line 116. It's been overwritten because of this function? Huh. Oh. Wait a second. It's been overwritten. That means we didn't lock the structure. But I do set initialized here. But this is item cleanup tests on user update. Handle user input, which gets us to right here. And get player staircase direction. Which then calls line 567, which is right here. So that must be where it creates it, because it's like it doesn't exist or something. So yeah, that would actually do it. Presumably once it loads, okay, so I think, let me see, set up level. Do we like do anything with map data in here? We do. And it's like, this is gonna be a fun mess to sort out, isn't it? I don't know if I want to do that. What I really want is to just test based on like saying, okay, map category. If we have a map category, do you respect it? We don't really care to load the stage, right? So can we avoid that and just have it look it up? We might be able to get away with that, because all we have to do is really test that one property of, is that category equal to this or that? So why don't we just trick the game into thinking we're on the level by just doing current level equals map, right? I think that would, well, actually that is what happens. So are we just doing something accidental that I didn't mean to? Game helper, item tests, because I feel like I shouldn't have to go. I guess we should actually debug this and see what's happening now, because I'm not entirely sure. Let's just breakpoint here. Let's run the unit test again. And we'll just follow it for a little bit. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, actually, 5:35. Probably get going, because I need to go. But this is a good stopping point. We kind of know what we're getting into. And this should be an easy fix, just I want to test it as well. I think it's important to make sure the stage loot doesn't get populated anymore when we're not in a stage, so that's why I wanted to address this unit testing thing. Tomorrow we'll finish up writing this, whatever states we have to set that we don't have set right now, and then go back to our items and make sure that's well and done. And maybe item loading has improved. Apparently, saving still sucks. So we're also going to have to address that too, but hopefully you all enjoyed the stream today. It's been a fun coding session, and we got a lot more to do. We got our work cut out for us tomorrow, so thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have a good one. Thank you, Tiger. Appreciate it. And for anybody else that tuned in, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.